Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to She Rox It. This is Roxanne Ayers, and I'm going to spend today talking about, sensory overload. And if you're not familiar, but as an MSer, we go through different stages of our disease, and everybody's different. Everybody has different limitations. But I know that it took me a while to understand why some things were so much more difficult or frustrating or kind of impossible to get organized or even just anything out of the pocket. And I started to read an article that talked about, how MS has a huge realm of sensory overload, meaning our bodies are working overtime as it is. And we exhaust ourselves trying to just live, and then something as simple as the volume on a movie will wreck our comfort and our ability to even watch it. And I think everybody has a little bit of this, but I think if their body was arguing with itself as much as ours does, they would not, everybody be screaming at each other. But our bodies are tired. And they're working all the time. Every part and piece of everything and they're not working together. They're not a part of the same team. Any one given part of your body. But you need to begin to give yourself permission to have this sensory overload and then speak it to teach people around you. Because otherwise, somebody complaining about the volume of a show or a movie or just, anything would just make you sound like you're, a stick in the mud. But that is not what's happening. You're taking in extra information and ones that it was not predictable. You didn't know you were uncomfortable with until it started happening. And they go, hey, can we please just turn this down? And everybody's like, no, this is the best. We got to turn it all the way up because this is where we hear the bass of the, the different, monsters and this and that. And we've got to do it. And I've got a sound bar behind the couch so I can really crank it. And I'm telling you this like it's some random person, but this is my husband. It took us a while to adjust to this new life of him being a little more considerate of my stuff, and then me learning how to excuse myself from a situation that's uncomfortable without making anybody else uncomfortable. So it's kind of strange because you hope that you can just be like everybody else, and 90% of the time, you have an opportunity to do what everybody else is doing. And maybe the noise isn't the thing. Maybe it's just the sheer activity of what you're looking at and then what you're hearing. Like, I'll give you an example. My friends, they'll come over and they'll have they're 5 kids deep and they're running around screaming about something or irritated about something. And it's funny because you don't want to be a brat about their kids making noise because they're children, but it can be so overwhelming. I can't imagine but maybe if they're your children and you have a chance to build a tolerance over the years with your MS and stuff, I think it wouldn't work as crazy. But I have no kids. I have dogs. And tell you the truth, every time they bark excessively, it makes me crazy. It did already, I think, before the MS. And I've had dogs for years and years. But I just can't hack it. And God, if the TV's on and then the dogs are barking and then the kids are running around and my legs are spastic and my eyes, because my eyes move all the time. So that's exhausting in itself. So that's sensory overload before you even get a chance to do any additives. But, and it's so funny because between the people having children and them being noisy or being rambunctious or whatever, and they're good kids, they're just children. But then, God forbid, if they cough too, and you think they might have some kind of infectious something, and with our compromised immune systems, and especially if you're on a disease-modifying drug, you're paranoid like crazy. By the time it's all said and done, they just assume that you hate children, and, you can't handle them because you don't like them and you don't have any. And I'm like, no, it's just sometimes I'm just full. And the sensory overload happens when everything starts kind of spilling over, and then the exhaustion gets bigger and the nervousness gets bigger. And MS is a big, ugly nervous disease if you don't build tools to make it otherwise, and it's not necessarily, saying anything about the people you're interacting with. It's really all about you. But it is your job to then communicate with other people about your limitations. And we don't sometimes because we feel bad, and they already had to pick up our chair to put it in the car, and then they maybe had to help you go grab your food from the restaurant from the buffet to the table. And then how am I going to turn around and tell somebody to turn their music down, or tell them don't bring 500 children to my house, for several reasons, sensory overload, or being, worried about getting sick and getting infected by any kind of incubational germs they might have. And it's intense. So that's what I start with people. I say, listen, when I talk to somebody and I'm explaining to them the ins and outs of the disease and stuff, and usually when I first meet somebody, just so I don't have to, and I call it a training process. And it's not like when you start a job. It's like there are certain things that you can't do by yourself, or certain things they may not understand about your disability, or some things I lost my phone. For example, holding on to your phone. There are certain things that people wouldn't automatically know because they can't even begin to understand what it's like to look out from your eyes and look out from a body of destruction at times. So I do a crash course kind of thing with people when I newly meet them. I say, hey, come here, come really close. And I'm calling them close to look at my eyeballs so they can see how they wiggle in circles, or more like a figure eight, which is pretty trippy, people. I'm not going to lie. 90% of the time, I wish that people could see out from behind my eyeballs just once so they can understand the gravity of this situation. But even then, I've become accustomed to it, so they'd probably freak the heck out and they need some serious adjustment after. I think the normal person might throw up because it is moving all the time in circles, all the time. And then, so what I'll do, I'll have them come real close. I'm like, I'm going to show you my eyes so you know what I'm dealing with. And I say, so my eyes go in really wild, fast circles. Do you see them? And they do, sort of. And then what I'll do is I'll look up so it gives it a clear, like when I focus on something, it really makes it noticeable. So I'll look up and then I'll look to the side and look to the other side. I said they do that all the time. So what I need from you is if you are responding to me, can you give me an audible response? Because everybody's nodding, everybody's saying no and yes all the time. There is no way on God's green earth I'm going to see what you're throwing at me from a little tiny nod or a look or anything. That would be impossible. But here's the other thing. As much as I'm showing them my eyeballs, it gives me an opportunity to get them close enough so I can build a muscle memory for looking at them. And it's pretty crazy because you don't want to think about it all the time, but like I get these pieces, these slots of information all the time, especially if people are far away. I can't build an idea of who I'm looking at. So when I bring them in, it's good for me and it's good for them to understand the gravity of the situation. And so that's a process. But then, God forbid, you have to explain sensory overload to them. And that doesn't happen right away. They already know you have this new limitation. They know that they help you get in and out of the car. They know that maybe you have to get assistance in the home for safety purposes or for showering purposes. And so there's that limitation. But then people are just always on high alert with you after that, which is cool and not cool. But then you go to the movies with somebody and you have to excuse yourself because it is blowing your mind. All the hearing and the seeing and the doing, and that there's just the inability to listen when this stuff is happening. Now, this happens for me because I have wiggly eyes and I have MS and all this stuff, but every one of us has a different type of disease in the MS umbrella situation. So there are some people who don't have as many jarring things like I do, but also the sensory overload thing is a reality. So maybe no, we would not want to have someone vacuum while the TV's on and there's a conversation happening at the other end of the couch while your dog is barking. Now that would be exhausting for any person, but with the MS-er, it's like your body's like really having a serious reaction to it. It's almost like you're allergic. You're like, just too much. No, thank you. I'm full. I've had enough. But it's not to pass judgment on people. But the best way to handle that is you utilize your words. You give yourself an opportunity to teach them how these things affect you. And so they're not surprised. And you never know. There are some people that are really dense and they won't take it all in and work with it. But 90% of the time, you have people who genuinely have questions and they want to know. Usually it starts out asking, oh, so what happens with that disease? How does the MS disease work? And then you go, and it's funny when people ask how you're doing, you consider yourself like you think about it, you're like, do they want the long-winded explanation or do they want the quick, easy, oh, doing good? I'm telling you, most of the time they want, I'm doing good. And they don't realize it until you go on a monologue or a soliloquy about how tired or how frustrated you are or how whatever. So we guard people's feelings in a way all the time. But there's at a point where people need to be respecting our space and our feelings. But they won't know unless you tell them. But a lot of times we don't even know why we're frustrated. But I would say majority of the time we are just getting too much information too fast for our bodies and our brains to take in successfully. And it's not speaking to the people's, nobody's like losing their minds in front of you, but you're losing your own mind in front of them. And they can't even imagine. Say, when I wake up in the morning and I think about all the parts and pieces I have to think about, and I talk about getting out of bed all the time on this thing, seeing if my feet are underneath me, seeing if my day is going to be okay, if my body is going to work. And there's some people who, all they do is have time to think because they can't do nearly as much as I can. And I don't even know how they imagine, how they're able to. And some of these are people with children. Oh my goodness, it blows my mind. And I love my dogs. But if I could just have a dog that just did like a cute, I wish I could have a dog that just purred or meowed. Wouldn't that be the cutest thing in the most non-jarring situation possible? But no, I have I have a tiny little Scotty Dachshund dog, and he barks like a giant dog. He's not very big, but he sounds like a pit bull or a Doberman or something like that. And then I have a little whiny one that has more of a rasp to it. And then I have a Chihuahua that is not my Chihuahua, and they have the most grating barks in history. So if I've got 3 dogs barking, then I've got a few of my friends bringing their kids over, and they're making noise. And then my husband is listening to the radio entirely too loud. He can hear it. Does it have to be the bass and everything, and then the listenings of the madness and he's not a rock star, let's be real. Just enjoy it peacefully for me at least. But Jacob was always very sweet about it. He wasn't at first. At first, I didn't know why I was frustrated. I didn't know why the TV seemed too loud. I didn't know why I couldn't handle, children's birthday parties for more than, an hour. But that's what this disease is. It's a constant learning process about ourselves. But then we must, as decent human beings, we must equip the people that love us with the same tools. Because they don't know. They just think you're being a rotten brat or something. And so I'll sit down. I have somebody sit down and I tell them, hey, so when you're yelling and then the show is on and then, somebody is on their phone and you hear that constant beep because they're getting notifications, and then, an alarm goes off on the cookies that are baking. And I don't know who's doing all the cooking in that moment, but it sure as heck ain't me. I have quite a few burns on my forearm that say it's a bad idea. So I kind of look at them every time I think I want to go and fry some tortillas for some enchilada casserole or whatever. I look at my arm and I go, get real, Roxanne, this is not. But these are all things that we think about on a daily basis. Always on, always thinking. We got to think about our medications in the morning, remembering them at the right time, making sure we get the ones that are noon meds at the right time. Because like I do, you get those out of sequence, your body has a real hard time adapting. Because honestly, some of these meds that keep my body from jumping and jiving, it also keeps me from having pretty severe tight spasticity and it hurts. It just hurts. Now, I always tell people I don't have pain. I couldn't imagine having unfixable, nonstop pain with my condition. But if I wasn't taking my meds the way I was supposed to, that would be a reality for me. And that's probably a reason why I live in Colorado and marijuana is legal and stuff. And that's probably why I can't smoke marijuana successfully a lot of the times, because I'm already on high alert, but then I get paranoid and then I get whatever. Now, a lot of people don't deal with this, and I'm not advertising for it. I am saying for me specifically, even long before, when you're a kid and you make dumb choices, whatever, I knew it wasn't for me, because I would have a physical reaction from this thing because I was always very sensitive. And, but then when I have MS, it's just never a good idea. It's just another element of sensory overload. And I wish so badly that I was one of these people who could just veg and feel awesome when they're stoned. But anyways, don't get stoned. But I'm saying there's no point. There's no point in fighting it, You just need to work with it. And I think we are in a place in our hearts and our minds at times where it's just too much. We just have too much to deal with. And honestly, it's a huge undertaking. But we have these happening, and we know, and we build a rapport with ourselves, but we have to do the people in our lives the solid and educate them on how to deal with us and what is helpful to you. And because it's doing a disservice to everybody if they don't have the tools they need to be on your team. And because you don't want to be, you don't want to be a wet blanket at a party or at a movie or at anything. But there are times where we just have to speak it because something needs to change. But if you prep them for it, it tends to have a little less of a blowback. Because they go, oh yeah, she told me about this, so I don't know why I didn't think about it when it started happening. I'm sorry I wasn't considerate. And that usually happens if you equip somebody with all the information they need to assess a decision maybe they're making and how it may possibly affect you. Now, there are some people who really don't consider anybody's feelings, and those are not the constant. You're not finding that all the time. I would say 80% of the time you have a relatively nice person who doesn't mind adapting their behaviors to hopefully make you a little more comfortable at a get together or at a situation. But you get these other ones that like to push the envelope. And those are kind of my favorite because that gives me, let's say it gives me an in to be a butthead, but if I warn them and I tell them about it, and then when they see the wrath of the overstimulated Roxanne, I'm not going to apologize. I may apologize. I say I'm not, but I gave them all the tools they needed to deal with my crazy. They can choose to use it. And then I can choose whether or not I want to make it a big stink or not. And my husband says, there's no time, Roxanne, that you don't want to make it a big job or a stink. And he's not meaning like I'm a job. He's meaning I make it always a big theatrical undertaking, anything I do. It's kind of like I like to make noise because it's the one part of me that works really well, this mouth. And I want to see if I can wait through these dogs barking. See, sensory overload. I told you about this. Oh, and then I'm trying to talk on here, and I don't know how long it's going to take for my mother-in-law to get to the door to open it. Because every time she's outside, these dogs, you hear that chihuahua noise? Hey, this kind of works. It's like an Exhibit A kind of thing. And just life happens, You genuinely have no control over what's going to happen in your life at times. But if you could equip people to deal with you, it's it's not so hard. It's not so bad. But you just need to give yourself the tools you need to do what you have to do. And there will be noises, there will be things, and the sensory overload thing is real. But you have to be able to kind of compartmentalize if you can to be well and to do what you have to do and make sure you're comfortable in your own skin. But like I said, you can't expect people to make these choices without knowing what you're dealing with. So sitting somebody down and giving them the tools to help you or to be considerate of you, that's your job. What they do with it, that's their job. Or they don't do anything at all. You never know. But ultimately, you don't want it to be you don't want to be angry with people because of their behaviors and the things that they choose. Okay, so just now the dogs kind of went a little crazy, and then the mother-in-law came in, and then she's in the other room. And there's noises that are happening all the time. Life happens. And it's not all coming to a halt because you have multiple sclerosis and you have sensory overload. So maybe she might be in the next room, putting dishes away or something, and it makes quite a bit of noise. But you wouldn't expect somebody to stop doing what they do because you're having an MS time. That is an unrealistic thing. But if we can equip them with the tools that they need to be helpful to you without passing judgment on them and thinking that, they don't care or this and that. And that's not exactly the thing. Like, and it's weird. It's hard too. Just any random little noise kind of makes you a little less focused, I'm surprised I'm still able to talk right now. This was crazy. It was kind of awesome because it gives you a specific listening to what life can be like when you're trying to do something. Because the world does not revolve around us as much as we need it to. It doesn't. But what you can do is you can offer the people that love you and care about you the tools they need to help you be well. And they're not always going to take it, and they're not always going to be thinking about it. And why would you? Your life, the world doesn't revolve around you, even though it feels that way, because you have so many people working together to make you well at times and doing what they need to do. But give yourself a break. Give them a break. And you know what? In those moments, if you have to step away and just pray a little bit and give it to God and say, Father God, just give me the strength I need to work through this. Give me the opportunity to do what I need to do to be successful. And it doesn't take much. And prayer is such a meditation, no matter how you look at it. Whether you're a believer in God or not, prayer is meditation. And maybe it'll help you, kind of chime out when you need to. But please remember to give thanks to the people who love you and you appreciate them and you think they're awesome. And, because it's a thankless job for them sometimes. And maybe you're the one person that they just need to hear it from. And you would hope that somebody would have gratitude and thank you for the things that you choose to do for them. And because, we don't want to be like petulant children, but sometimes we can't help it because we are so stinking agitated about our situation that we just are little brats and we throw a fit. And sometimes it's a very real concern, which is fair. We have to tell people about that too. We have to tell what we're working with. So if you could take time to explain to people what you're dealing with and how certain things affect you as soon as you can in the relationship, because they're not going to understand it until you give them the ins and outs. And you just tell them every part of me is working like crazy and they're not working together. So any extra loud noise, any banging, any dog barking, any children running around like crazy, sometimes makes it difficult for me to focus or just makes me uncomfortable in my own skin. And then pray about it. Well, excuse yourself and pray about it. Meditate on it. Not on it, but on being well and feeling well. And being grateful for the air in your lungs and your ability to hear it all, I suppose, or see it all. So that's all I've got for today, guys. So I hope this reaches somebody that needed to hear it under the giant MS&Me umbrella. I'm glad you're here. And check in with me later. Bye.